everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Is This Actually Healthy? This is your host speaking, Juliana, and I'm very happy to present to you with another exciting interview episode today. We have another exciting topic. It was actually brought fresh to my mind when I went to eat with my colleagues for lunch the other day. And a couple of people at my lunch table adamantly agreed when we started talking about supplements that all supplements are terrible and that anyone who basically eats food in a relatively responsible manner should never have to take any extra supplements. That it's just expensive, it's a waste, your body flushes them all out. And I was sitting there thinking, and I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that supplementation definitely can have its benefits. But there are instances perhaps where people do supplement irresponsibly. So, how do we know where to begin? With the supplement industry being as huge as it is, with 1,000 different things on the shelf, if you actually do need to supplement with something, then what should it be? So, this is the topic for today, and I've brought on a special guest to help me get through it. Our guest today is Dr. Doug Lucas, or Dr. Doug. He is a health optimization physician and also a trained orthopedic surgeon. Dr. Doug is the founder of telehealth practice Optimal Human Health. And he also hosts a program focused on making lifestyle changes, supplementation, hormone optimization, medications, and so much more. So it's my pleasure today to have a real expert and a real doctor on the show to talk about supplements. Hello, Dr. Doug. Say hi to my audience.
Hi, Juliana. Hello, everybody out there. So happy to be here.
Great. Just because I read out the word health optimization in your intro, how would you describe health optimization since this is something that you specialize in?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a very vague word, but it's the best word I can come up with that defines clearly what we do. Because there are so many different aspects in the, outside of traditional medical healthcare, things like integrative medicine, things like functional medicine. And so to find a way to bring kind of the best of all of those worlds together, I call it health optimization.
There's definitely a lot of new terminology floating around. I'm learning some new terms as I do this show. I know the whole integrative medicine, functional nutrition, things like that have come up before, and yeah, it seems like they can be complicated if you don't know how to simplify it or integrate the concepts together and just realize, hey, this is just a part of you trying to live your best life.
That's right. That's a nice way to say it.
So, stemming off of what is health optimization, how can supplementation help us achieve it? Where do supplements play a part in this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hear frequently the thoughts that your friends had during lunch. People will have this objection to taking supplements because they really feel like they can get it all through their diet. The reality is that our food has become less and less nutrient dense over the last several decades. The farming practices that are abundant both in America and across the world are stripping our soil of pretty much all the nutrients that were once in them. So maybe it's true that we don't need supplements, or sorry, I should say that again. Maybe it's true that we didn't need supplements at some point, but I think that time has passed, and the reality is that we probably do need them now. The question is which ones, and it's going to vary person by person. So to answer your question, where do they come in? They come in after, in my practice at least, after a thorough evaluation of somebody's genetics, after evaluation of some of the nutrients that we can test in blood, and functional testing, and getting a sense of where people are. Because if you just look at, as you said, the thousands of supplements on the shelf, how do you pick?
Yeah, I guarantee that nobody out there has to take everything. And I've seen people in my life who will take a whole handful of supplements at a time.
Right.
And I know that they're not a magic pill. If you take a supplement, you're not magically covering all your bases and making yourself healthy if you don't have a good diet. But there are people who will result to this, and they probably spend exorbitant amounts of money on all these supplements. But
Absolutely.
the bottom question is how many pills in your hand that you're looking at, how
Mhm.
many do you actually need? Is that something that should be medically determined?
I think that you should work with somebody who has a really good understanding of of what the needs are, of what the micronutrients are, and then really what your goals are. Because depending on what you're trying to resolve or fix, if you have an issue, or depending on what your goals are from a longevity or whatever your goals are, you could really pick. I mean, I can pick 20 supplements for every single one of those things, whether it be the gut or the adrenals or whatever. So it really depends on where you are and what your goals are. We always try to minimize though and cut the list down as much as possible because there are just so many options out there.
Yeah, the best option for sure is to get what you can from your diet
Of
and then
course.
supplement to fill in the gaps. You can't just take a bunch of supplements and then rely on that while eating a bad diet. It
That's right.
doesn't exactly
No,
work that
you
way.
can't out supplement a poor diet, just like you can't outrun a bad diet.
Right. I myself, I take a couple supplements,
What do you
and
take?
I think these are pretty sensible for someone like me. I eat a vegan diet, so
Hmm.
naturally I supplement with iron because I know that I'll usually fall short of that. I can plan and get food-based sources of iron, but on a consistent daily basis, that is a bit difficult to plan. So I like to take an iron supplement just to ensure that I'm getting that because iron's involved in so many cellular processes. And
Right.
I also take B12. That's pretty much a given. Vegetarian, vegan diet. It's I think you would probably recommend that yourself if someone said they were on a vegan diet.
Yep. Absolutely.
And yeah, I try to keep it minimum because I know that I do eat a pretty well-rounded, balanced diet, but I do also take a multivitamin every day. And I know that there's even contention about a multivitamin. Now, what would you say about that? Would you recommend that to about everybody, or is that something that you got to think about as well?
Well, so I think the issue with the multivitamin is unless it's coming from a really good source, most people that I see on a multivitamin, it's usually from, Costco or a big box store. And then you really have to question, where has this thing been? How is it made? And how long has it been on the shelf? So quality becomes my biggest concern around a multivitamin.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing quite a bit about the genetics of micronutrients, I know that some micronutrients are inflammatory for some people and they're not for others. So a great example with the multivitamin is that almost every multivitamin has vitamin E in it. And vitamin E for about half of the population causes inflammation when it's given in the form that's in the supplements. So for vitamin E, this is something that you don't want to take as a supplement if you are susceptible to the inflammation. And if you don't know, like most people don't, then you probably shouldn't take a multivitamin because you're probably getting it.
Mm-hmm. Is it in general? I mean, for people who wouldn't have a problem with, say, vitamin E, is it a good way to cover your bases if you just need like a small amount of a wide range of nutrients you're probably missing? Is that the best
Yeah,
way?
I feel like probably you're not getting enough of anything in a multivitamin. I think that's the downfall is when you look at the dosage in it, you're almost fooling yourself to think that the tiny doses of vitamin D and vitamin K and vitamin A that they're actually adequate because they're just tiny doses because they're trying not to overload your system with too many things all at once, but that's actually kind of what they're doing. So I think that I stay away from multivitamins. I don't recommend them for my patients because we're getting very specific information. Without that information, if you're trying to cover your bases, maybe, but again, half of the population is going to have an inflammatory reaction to it.
Interesting. I had no idea about that. Do you know what percentage of like average people do take one?
I've seen those statistics. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's about half of the adult population takes some kind of a multivitamin.
Yeah. Is there any, I mean, I guess besides some potential inflammatory responses, are there any other cons to say a multivitamin or some of these supplements that could be pretty harmful?
Yeah, I mean, there are certainly cons to supplements in general, but specifically with the multivitamin, I think that the biggest issue is that you're probably going to be fooling yourself that you're getting what you need out of a vitamin if that's all you're taking. Um, as far as supplements in general, depending on where you're getting them from, what the quality is like, and what is actually in them, yeah, they can be harmful. And that's one of the things I wanted to mention to your audience is just, to make sure that you're getting them from a good source. And that can be challenging to know. But there are some companies, and I have no affiliations with them, but, companies like Thorne, that's Thorne, they have third party testing available that's visible on their website. And companies like that's all they do is make supplements. And generally, those companies are going to also then not sell them on big platforms like Amazon or to Costco.
It is a little bit concerning how supplements typically aren't regulated by the FDA, or
Right.
they do have pretty poor accountability for what's actually in them. So, yeah, how do we build trust and know exactly where we should get them?
Yeah, you really have to build, I guess you build rapport with a company based off of who is doing business with them. So, for example, in my practice, companies like Thorne, another company that is publicly available, but in a challenging way, Metabolic Code. And these companies basically are third party testing. They're marketing to providers, and they're showing, hey, we are checking to make sure that what we say is in here, and you can be confident in this and recommending it. So it's almost like pharmaceutical grade. I'm using a little air quotes. I know people can't see me, but pharmaceutical grade supplements that really doesn't mean anything other than for me as a provider, I'm confident that they're, at least my patients aren't getting a bunch of toxic filler in them, and they should be getting what we're actually trying to treat them with. I'm also testing my patients. And so, if I'm giving a patient, let's use vitamin D, for example, which is a great one to talk about. If I'm giving my patients vitamin D and I'm giving them an adequate amount and it's coming from an unknown source and their vitamin D doesn't go up when I retest their blood, I'm definitely going to question that source. Whereas if I'm using a company and I know that it's likely going to be what I'm saying it is, and it doesn't go up, then I'm more interested in, okay, genetically, is this person not converting this well, or do they need to add more vitamin K or whatever? But I think that I'm retesting, so I can tell for some things whether or not it's being used appropriately, but not all things are
If
testable.
you're really deficient in something, then it probably would benefit to consult a health professional and get testing done, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of that approach. It's not globally available is the challenge, and so there are more and more companies, like mine, that are becoming easier to find and use with a lower price point. But right now, really, the health optimization space is kind of challenging. If you can find a provider that can help you to understand, particularly the genetics and then also the blood testing around it, then absolutely. I can take somebody who's on 100 supplements, run them through our program, and whittle it down to 10 and feel good about it. But without that information, it's really hard to know.
What are let's switch gears here. What are some of the best benefits of being on the right supplements?
Yeah, I mean, I look at health optimization as a way to really improve people's energy, their vitality, their stamina, their drive and desire for life. I mean, those are the sort of that gut feeling you get when things are just working well. I think that's what we're aiming for with supplementation, right? Like we're trying to make the system run better. Um, so that's really what it should feel like. Obviously, it depends on what you're going for. So for things like gut health, you're obviously trying to improve the way that your gut feels and functions. If you're trying to improve the thyroid or trying to improve, adrenal function, it's all going to feel a little bit different. But ultimately, overall, we just want the whole system to work better.
What would you say the most popular supplements are that people are deficient in, ones that you recommend? What's most popular ones out there that people need?
Yeah, I mean, so the things that are popular are not necessarily the things that people are deficient in,
That's true.
unfortunately. But so the things that I see people deficient in, it's a lot of it's going to depend on what their diet's like. But overall, regardless of the diet, I see deficiencies in things like magnesium, which, when tested appropriately, I mean, almost universally, people are deficient. Vitamin D, almost universally, people are deficient, even if they're supplementing. And there's a lot we could talk about that for a while. Um, Omega threes. So we look at the actual fatty acid profile, and we look at how much omega 3 fatty acids you have in your body. So omega threes are fish oil, basically, for your listeners, and it's really hard to get a healthy amount of omega-3 in your diet. It doesn't matter if you eat animals or not. It's just hard to get that much fish in your diet. And even if you do, then you have to be concerned about, okay, now am I toxic because of the toxic fish? So again, that's another one that's pretty globally deficient. Those are the things that I test for that I see often. If I didn't mention B vitamins too.
Okay, yeah, that's probably the short list I would have come up in my head. I was wondering about iron. Is iron a common
Yeah.
one even among everyday diets?
Yeah, I mean, so my patients, we treat basically, every different type of we'll call it nutritional belief, and so from vegans to carnivores, I would say in general, iron is not particularly low unless you're following a strict vegan or vegetarian diet, unless you have other sources of bleeding that are either identified or not.
I actually used to donate blood plasma. I used to do that pretty frequently, and in order to do that, they would test your iron levels to ensure it was high enough. And
Right,
me being very good with my diet, I could usually donate twice a week and manage to keep my iron levels pretty high. But there definitely were times when I felt I was slacking, where I knew that I probably wasn't getting enough iron, and then it would drop down and get too low to donate. So that was one little measure that I was
right.
using to measure my iron. I actually forgot to mention earlier, I actually do take a magnesium supplement because I've heard a couple other people
Hmm.
on different podcasts who say that this is a supplement that just is really great and sometimes it's underrated. You should definitely take it. So I do take that one as well, but I
Yeah,
don't really I assume
yeah.
I'm probably deficient in it like you said if it's pretty universal, but I've never had it tested.
Yeah, it's pretty universal and it's pretty hard to overdose. So if you're taking it by mouth, it's really hard to take too much. Just as a caveat, if anybody has kidney disease out there, that's the one example where you actually could take too much.
There is some fear with taking supplements, the fear of what happens if you take too much. What exactly does your
Hmm.
body do when it gets an excess amount of a micronutrient?
Yeah, it depends on the micronutrients. So in general, I mean, if we're talking about vitamins versus minerals versus I guess fatty acids and amino acids, those are all the things that you could potentially take. And so with vitamins, you're going to divide it up into water soluble versus fat soluble. Usually water soluble, you almost can't take too much. Your body's just going to put it into the bloodstream. The kidneys are going to filter it out and you're going to pee it out. Fat soluble can build up in your adipose tissue, though. So fat soluble being the A, D, E, and K, D being the most frequently supplemented one. It's still pretty hard to actually take too much of that, though. And I see people that take a lot of vitamin D, and very rarely do I see it being too high, but it is possible. Definitely knowing which category your vitamin fits into is important there. With minerals, you can definitely overdose on a mineral. So if you depending on what you're taking for what reason, right? Like you can take too much copper, you can take too much zinc, you can imbalance your copper and zinc ratio. Magnesium we mentioned is hard to take too much of, but you have to be careful when you start talking about minerals because your body doesn't necessarily tolerate them well, and even iron, right? If you take too much iron, you're going to have issues. You're going to create an inflammatory state. So you do have to be careful with all those things. When it comes to fatty acids and amino acids, you're talking about fat and protein. Those are things your body's going to pretty much know what to do with pretty well because it's like eating, it's like eating food.
Yeah, I want to go into a specific example here. I was just thinking about when cold and flu season rolls around, when everyone starts pounding down the zinc and the
Yeah,
vitamin D. I'm kind of curious when people are desperately trying to supplement themselves as a defense for a passing disease. Is this an
right.
appropriate measure to take? Is there any evidence this does any good?
It's so funny. So I actually literally just tested myself for COVID and tested positive. So it's a very poignant time to ask that
Oh
question.
wow, are you in quarantine
So,
right now?
well, I guess I mean literally just tested. So I'm in my basement. Um, I work from home, so quarantine's easy.
Wow.
But the reality is this, because I've been talking with patients about COVID. This practice really sort of sprung up during the pandemic, and so it's always been on people's minds. Um, The reality is if you look at the studies on, on COVID in particular, but other viruses follow suit as well. If you look at the studies on supplementing at the time, like even vitamin D, which we know should have a significant impact, if you're starting as you get diagnosed, it's not going to have as much of an impact. So the reality is you should be optimized before that, and you should be ready for it so that when you get sick, because inevitably we will all get exposed to COVID, we'll all get exposed to the flu and to regular cold viruses. When that happens, you're ready and you're as prepared as you can be. So should you bump up your vitamin D or zinc or whatever else you think is going to help? Probably not going to hurt. There are some things like, I think, like zinc and vitamin C in particular, which your immune system needs more of during an infection. But I think the best, I guess, offense is a good defense, to use that cliche. So you just prepare it ahead of time.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I really wanted to hear a professional's opinion about that. It is very common to think you can save yourself with sudden supplementation, but yeah, if you do it beforehand, before you're actually sick, that's probably the best way to go.
Right.
Supplements will often say that they're useful for certain things, certain cellular processes, but one thing that I definitely take with a small grain of salt is when you read the bottle of something and it says, may help with this, it may do this.
Right.
But it doesn't, they can't really say that it will actually do this. There's
Right.
a guarantee that it will help your health in this way. Is this just something that happens across all supplements? Are any supplements allowed to give definite statements about what it can help with?
Yeah, so that's an FDA thing. And so, as you mentioned earlier, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, they do not monitor supplement quality, and so you cannot, as a supplement manufacturer, make a claim that hasn't been approved by the FDA. So, all supplements usually, I shouldn't say that, most supplements are going to not have a claim to say this will help with this, because then the FDA would come down on them. However, there are some nutraceuticals that do have FDA clearance. These are things that have typically been looked at as a drug. So a drug company actually produced them and did studies, and the FDA approved them for one thing or another. So they are out there. They're not common. And as a nutraceutical manufacturer, it costs millions, if not billions, of dollars to get that FDA tag. It's just not worth it. So I think, I wouldn't necessarily look for things that have that FDA approved for this or that, because it's probably not even going to say that. Just really have a good sense of why you're taking something. There really shouldn't be any supplement that you're taking without a clear reason of, I know I have this, I know I need this. Like with you and what you're likely missing in your diet. You likely need B12. You likely need iron, based because you're testing it, right? So that's the way that you should look at supplementation.
Great. Just to kind of bring this topic to a close, summarizing everything that we've just said, if you could give a 30-minute blurb about what people should walk away from here knowing about supplements, what would it be?
Yeah, I think the big picture takeaway is that the supplements are part of health optimization. I look at kind of the foundation. If you were to create a pyramid of health optimization things, the bottom part of that pyramid is going to be lifestyle. It's going to be your actual diet. It's going to be your actual, exercise, the things that you are doing on a daily basis that you're disciplined about. But the next level up is going to be supplementation, because there's so many things that we can't get through our diet, that we're going to have a hard time doing based on our genetics. We know we're deficient in based on our blood testing. So that's really where that fits in. That fits in before you then layer on things like hormone optimization, peptides, medications. You really should do the bottom part of that pyramid first. And then I think another important point is just to say that, you need to look for good quality supplements. Look for companies where that's all they do, that they incorporate third party testing. Um, if they are being used by physicians and practitioners, then you could probably trust them. But but always question it. If you find it on Amazon, if you find it on big box stores like in Costco, I would always question that as a source, just because of how long they've been on the shelf.
for everyone out there who isn't on any supplements and you need to think about what you might want to start, I hope this has given you some ideas. If you're the person with a whole handful of supplements, maybe this is a time to reassess exactly what you're putting in your body. But either way, I really hope that this has helped you out. And I have to again thank Dr. Doug Lucas for being on the show today. Now, I understand that you have a couple social media places. If my listeners want to go find you, where should they look?
Yeah, if you want to follow me and learn more about all the things that I'm interested in, that's on my personal. Generally, Instagram is the best way to find me, but we also reproduce that on Facebook, and that's at Dr. _Doug Lucas. And then our company is Optimal Human Health with an underscore in between each one of those.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Yeah, it's been so great having you here.
Great, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
And that concludes today's interview. As always, I'm going to keep this closer short and simply remind you that wherever you're listening to this show, you should leave it a rating and also share it with your friends. I know you have people in your life who could benefit from this information and who would like to learn more about how they can improve their fitness and nutrition lifestyles in a practical, engaging way. So keep tuning into the show. And if you haven't started from the beginning, then you can always go back and listen from episode 1. I got a lot of great content that can help you reach your fitness and nutritional goals. One last reminder, you can find me on Instagram at Is This Actually Healthy? There's no punctuation in that, just Is This Actually Healthy? I would love to connect with you on there if you'd like. Once again, I am wishing you the best, and I hope to see you again in a future episode. Ciao, ciao.